Over the years, as I traveled for business, I would have the occasional layover in Newark. And this was back in the day before all the regulations came in. And Samim would come and meet me at the gate. And he would carry this black zippered bag, which today would look incredibly conspicuous and suspicious, and he would have probably been hauled off by some agents. But back in that time, it was perfectly acceptable. And I would step off the plane, and he would greet me there with this black zippered bag. And we'd scurry over and find a quiet gate where there was a table and just a coffee table. So then he'd unzip the bag, and out would come a white tablecloth. And that's not all. So then would come the candlesticks, and there would be a tape with lovely music, and then out would come the containers of food. Well, you know, beautiful flight attendants walked by too. And while we were having a conversation, it seemed that he would make friends. And before you know it, we'd have this crowd of people, music, candles, food, and there was a party going on. And you know, this was Samim. This was just quintessential, the man that he was. So I have so many memories and so many stories. And so what I tried to do was to kind of distill them into at least a few life lessons that I would, and these are a few because I could think of so many, and I know that as I reflect I'll have others that come to mind, but these are a few that I would share with you. First is to always be kind to others, human and animal. He loved animals, and he was always kind. To live life out loud, whether it's music, poetry. You know, I mentioned he had my violin. After this, I may have to pick that violin back up and start my violin lessons over again. To love and cherish your life's partner, and I think we all know how much he adored Elizabeth. Love children and never lose your inner child. It's Samim's spirit, and you know, whether you see him on a skateboard hung in Budapest, I guess it was, right? He always had that child spirit and the ability to have fun. To surround yourself with amazing people and to nurture those friendships, and that's why you all are here, is because of the way that he touched all of you. Recognize that you cannot control life's events, so face them with courage and with grace. Grow old gracefully with charm and dignity. And finally, never, never lose your passion for life. So, you know, I'm going to miss my uncle, but I am a lucky woman for having had this incredible man in my life.
In thinking back, I realized that it was 35 years since I first met Samim, and on another occasion, Elizabeth. Over time, we developed a special closeness with the Zaralis, and they became for us an extended family. Later, we learned that these connections went even further back in time. Samim would not neglect to mention that my mother was his first crush back in Moda, Istanbul, when he was a young teenager. Ah, Samim, you always were so nice to the ladies. In reflecting over the years and the person that Samim was, certain memories still stay with me, as they do with all of us. I'll remember Samim's almost boyish and energy and enthusiasm and love of life. Sometimes in the spirit of the moment, in the middle of a conversation, he would be swept with joy and break out in a spontaneous conversation, reciting of poetry, usually the poems of Nazım Hikmet or other Turkish poets. Or how he would painstakingly work for hours and hours, preparing a wonderful meal of köftes, dolmas, pilav, and of course, as we all mentioned, his baklava, that everyone would indulge in for hours and enjoy. It was always from the heart that he did all this for everyone. Another memory I recall and admired is the newspaper article that hangs in his work study room, and for his recognition that he received while working at Chase for his charitable deeds in helping to feed the poor in Manhattan. He was a man of compassion. Samim loved music, and after retiring, he taught himself piano and to play those romantic French and classic post-war songs. I remember in the summer visiting And we were talking about some problem he had with transcribing some discs and the recordings of the music. And discussing, he starts telling me about how he went to Best Buy to buy some discs and meets a young Brazilian man who seems to understand about computers and about the problems he's having. And so Samim asked the young man, well, can you come back with me and home and show me and help me fix this problem? And the young man comes with him. And sure enough, he fixes the problem, and he's able to transcribe these recordings onto CD. And I'm sure Samim gave him a lot of baklava and made him a wonderful meal, because that's the way he was. But I stop and think, you know, how many of us would do that to someone we meet in a mall and befriend them? Samim was always ready to make new friends and to know people in a deeper way. He truly had an open heart and loved people and loved life. Samim, I think the last year and more recent months were particularly difficult for you with your deteriorating health, but you, and with the help of Elizabeth, endured this and stayed here a little longer than anyone expected. You will be remembered and missed by us all. As my son Keon says, we can be sure your spirit will always be here with us, and it will never leave. Thank you.
I'm sorry I'm late. I got lost. Like everybody, I have a lot of friends too. And one of them is Samim Zarali. But Samim differs in a number of ways from my other friends. Every time I remember his face or I hear his name, either on the phone or from a friend of mine or emails, a smile sets onto my face. I can't help it, I smile. I have such a wonderful and happy memories with this man. He lived in my hometown in Trabzon, Turkey, for about 10 years, from the age of 7 to 17 or 18, where his father was the chief of medicine, chief of the doctors in the hospital there. I was very young at that time, and I didn't know, we didn't know each other. I heard about this when I met him here. He used to have extremely funny memories about Trabzon, or his life period in Trabzon. And I knew some of his friends. They were older than I was or than I am. But we never have seen each other or met in Trabzon. One of the stories, real experiences he told me, and I remember, and I would like to share it with you here, is his quail hunting. You know, quails are birds which are very tasty to eat, actually. And they emigrate from Russia towards Turkey, northeastern part of Turkey, over the Black Sea, in fall, in the months of September or October. And as kids, we used to go out hunt them. As they flew over the Black Sea, they are already very tired, several hundred miles of flying. And when they arrive at Trabzon, they are already very tired, and especially if there is a rain, the rainwater makes their wings very heavier than normal, and they really fall down at the glimpse of a lantern light, a small light source. So we used to go out to hunt them with a light lantern in our hands, in our one hand, and a net, a circular net to catch them and hold them over in our other hand. I wasn't obviously with him when Samim went out to hunt quail with his friends. They decided to spread over, and each one would go on his own. That night was very dark, no stars, and rainy, and he really couldn't see where he was going. He knew he had to go through an old cemetery. And after the cemetery, there would be the coffee house where they would all meet. And while he was walking through the very old cemetery at night, no lights, and does not know where or how to go to the coffee house, he fell into an old grave. Before he knew where he was, he looked around and he realized that he was in a depressed old grave and up to his waist. He didn't experience anybody around, obviously. And the rain is coming down hard on him. He was already tired. He decided to stay there for a while to rest. As soon as he realized, where he was, he jumped over off the grave, already depressed, physically depressed grave, and found his way to the coffee house finally, where he met his friends. He talked about this with his friends. They had a very big laugh. He was very funny. This is only one experience. I can go on maybe an hour with his experiences like this. Lately, when he became ill, the last several years, he used to tell me, at least twice, he told me this on the phone, that he prayed to his God every night before he went to sleep, that he didn't want to get up alive in the following morning. I said, "Are you crazy?" He said, "Yes. I want to die while sleeping. I really don't want to get up alive in the morning." I said, "Why?" He said, "Excuse me if I get emotional. My nerves are no longer like a steel as they used to be." He said, "I really don't want to burden my lovely wife with the health problems I do have." Well, he achieved his aim, his wishes just a day ago, and he left extremely sincere, active or alive memories in my mind. I will never forget him. May God keep him in heaven and forgive his sins.